the very busy weekend over this past weekend and on Saturday, January 25th, in the world of combat sports. A lot of big fights, a lot of fantastic events. We're going to talk a lot about some news that came out, as well as some the future for some of the fighters. So, the events that went down, we had the Golden Boy show on Thursday, which I thought was okay. It ran a little bit long just because they had a lot of decisions on that card. Not much to say. Eric Priest was the headliner. I like Eric Priest, but I think that it's three straight in a row decisions now. I'd like to see more killer instinct from him. Like another dominant performance. Uh, but we need to really see like an up in the level there. Friday, the other small card that we had was the Pro Box TV card. I thought that card was really entertaining. They had, I think, 6 fights or so on the main card that they broadcast, which is more than they usually do. It was on a Friday night as well. Felt like it was more stacked. You had Najee Lopez having a good performance in the main event. He knocked out Lenin Castillo in round 6. That was a pretty good performance. Darrell Valzante had a second round stoppage. Some other good guys on the undercard. Uh, and then you had Jeremiah Milton, who was Pro Box's first like big heavyweight prospect that they had signed, and he was defeated by another undefeated opponent. I believe his name was Stanley Wright, who was far bigger than him, and to be honest, was gassed. And it just shows you that like you can't get too comfortable because I mean Jeremiah Milton, he totally could have won that fight. He was far more fit and easily. I think that if he just threw more, just wanted it more, he could have gotten the win. But he was passive, right? Despite being very tired, he hung in there all 10 rounds. One more, he scored a knockdown in the first round. So it was a really close fight. I think that I ended up scoring it like 95-94 for Wright. So very close fight, but it just goes to show you that you got to do more sometimes. You can't just because you may look better, that doesn't mean that you're winning. If you're not being as effective. But anyway, so those were the small cards. I thought they were both decent. Now for the big cards, we had 4 on Saturday. I'm going to talk about the one on Friday first, which is probably the biggest fight of the weekend, and that was, of course, Naoya Inoue, defending his undisputed titles against Yi Jun Kim with another fantastic knockout. I feel like every single fight with Inoue now, we're getting, like, when he knocks someone out, there's, like, a story with it, Where when it was 2 fights ago, it was Luis Nery. He gets knocked down in the first round, comes back, really puts it on and stops Nery in the 6th, I believe it was. Maybe it was the 5th. I think it was the 6th, though. You look at the TJ Doheny fight, like, very slow start from Inoue. And then once he got to round 7, I mean, he punched him so hard, he threw his back out. So it's just like, very funny stoppage. And this fight was probably the funniest of them all, or at least the weirdest. Not the weirdest, but the most like bad karma, I guess you could say. Because first of all, I think that I'm glad that Yoo Jun Kim stepped up, took the fight, saved the event. So we all got to see Inoue fight again. But and I think that he actually did pretty well. I think it was round 3 where I was scoring the fight on Twitter. And I said, listen, I give Inoue that round, but you honestly could give it to Kim. He was having pockets of success in there. And, I mean, it just kind of shows us that Inoue is fantastic. He's so good. But one day he's going to be in there with somebody that, is close to his level, and he's going to get really tested. I mean, we saw in the Nery fight, he got dropped. If Inoue can put it on, then it's fine. And that's what he did with Kim. Kim was never going to be able to do anything. But, the fact that he still had even a moment of success, shows that. I mean, I'm not saying like Inoue, if Inoue wanted, he wouldn't have any success. Inoue wanted to get a few rounds in, but it was really once Kim, Inoue was having lots of success in the 4th, throwing lots of big shots on him, and Kim, was taking them. He was like, oh yeah, come on, like waving him on, like, oh, is that all you got? And then within 20 seconds of him starting that whole charade, Inoue just knocks him out, just puts him down. And it was just one of the funniest stoppages because as soon as he started doing that, he was like, oh, you got to slow down, man. You should not be asking for more. And just instant karma. Just another classic Inoue performance. It was really fun to watch. Just like whenever he fights, it feels like it's such an event. Breakfast with the Monster. I'm so excited. His next fight is going to be, and I believe it's going to be Vegas. They actually talked about LA for a little bit too. They did a fight with him in the Dodger Stadium. That'd be brilliant. I really want to see a fight in a baseball stadium, but I also won't be mad if they do the fight in Vegas. I'm excited for that just because I won't have to wake up at, super early in the morning. This card started at 4:15, and I actually woke up for it because I wanted to see Jin Sasaki, who we'll talk about really quickly. He had a good performance. I didn't think that he did anything too overly wrong in the fight. I scored it 117, 111. So not bad. It's just that it felt a little bit like he was able to cover up a lot of his shortcomings with his power and with his just wild nature. Where, he was in with Shoki Sakai, who, went the distance with him, the second man to ever do so. But, he's just like... Sasaki was lucky that the guy he was fighting wasn't a power puncher like him because he gets hit way too much. And he calls out the welterweight champions at the end, and he's going to be due a title shot. He's top 4 within every single sanction. He will get a world title shot, I believe, probably end of the year. Depending on who the champion is, to be honest, I think that potentially right now all of them could beat him. He just has so many holes in his game. He's a great fighter to watch. Do I think he's world champion level? As of right now, no. I can see him being in fun fights. You throw him in there with, I saw somebody say David Avanesian. That's a good fight. You give him Rocha or Curiel. That's a good fight. I think that even him and Norman is probably the best fight because I think that Norman is the weakest of the world champions at 147 pounds. But I think Norman still probably beats him. But I think that I would like to see him in a world title contest, but I don't think that he's going to win one. As for Inoue and what's next for him, we know it's probably going to be Picasso in April. And this is, kind of what I'm getting at with Inoue is, and this is probably what's going to be the title of this episode, is Inoue ducking Murodjon Akhmadaliev? Now, I understand that, really ever since Inoue became undisputed again, Matchroom was calling for the Akhmadaliev fight. And I was like, okay, he definitely should be on the list, but no, Luis Nery came next. I think everybody was good with the Luis Nery fight. Then we were hearing Sam Goodman, which was a fight that I think most people, including myself, definitely would have preferred MJ over Goodman, but mandatory with IBF and WBO, still an undefeated opponent, whatever. Instead of that, they decided to say, okay, yeah, we'll fight you in December. We're going to fight TJ Doheny in September because he has he's fought in Japan a few times recently, and he's a fan base over there. He's known over there. And the fight just made no sense. At least TJ Doheny, I don't know, I can't remember if he was a former world champion, but he's at least a former world title challenger, I know. And he's getting a world championship shot at featherweight in his next fight against Nick Ball, which is beyond stupid. We'll talk about Nick Ball in a little bit as well, because he'll come into the picture. But, they're talking about doing so he does the Doheny fight, which is stupid. Then it's back to Goodman, and at that point, it's been a year, since MJ has been called mandatory. He won an eliminator in December of 2023, and I get it. At that point, I still think it's a little bit like whatever. Then, once Goodman gets pulled out, it's like, all right, let's bring someone in, and I would love for it to be Akhmadaliev. I understand it may not be. But then it's not like you get in another one of the top guys. You get Yi Jun Kim, who is so far down the list. And at that point, it's like, okay, what are you guys doing here? We know he's been the backup opponent for a month. You couldn't have gotten anyone else better for a month's notice? I strongly doubt that. And then it's like, okay, well, surely Akhmadaliev is next. No, he's going to bring in Island Picasso, who, again, is a good fighter, but he does not deserve it more than Akhmadaliev. I know some people are saying, like, oh, Inoue beat Tapales, who beat Akhmadaliev. Like, why should he get that shot? And I'm like, okay, yeah, he did, but that's not how boxing math works. I think that Inoue beats the brakes off MJ, but it's the best fight in the division. He's easily number 2. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It's just that, I don't know. I think that if you throw in Akhmadaliev with somebody like Goodman or Picasso or Nery, that's a more competitive fight just because the Inoue is so above them all, but as the undisputed champion, I want him to fight number 2 in the division. And do I think that Inoue himself is ducking? No, because I think that Inoue is a real fighter. I think that in a way, I don't see him as somebody who's saying like I don't know about MJ because we all know. I think it's his team and it's for some reason, and you can't say that it's not. He's been ordered mandatory 3 times now, I believe. He takes the Neri fight, makes sense. Takes the Goodman fight, takes Doheny in the middle, what? Goodman pulls out, they take Kim, what? And then they sign Picasso in advance. I mean, what the hell? Like, dude, fight MJ. Because right now, your run they're about to go on is TJ Doheny, Yi-Jun Kim, and then Alan Picasso. I mean, really? You're the best fighter potentially in the world, and that's the run that you're going on right now, in your prime probably. I mean, totally wasting it. I know that they want to do, I think they're going to try and do 4 fights with him this year, which doesn't make sense. I don't know. I'm not mad at the plan. It's just like, I don't know. It's just one of those things I'm like, man, in a way, you're hurting your brand a little bit, and he's lucky that he is such a big star that people kind of overlook it, but they won't for long. And I hope that WBA strips him of his belt. I mean, it doesn't matter because then MJ will get upgraded. Apparently, the plan is Picasso in April, then in Saudi in September. Or we know that he's going to fight in December in Saudi Arabia. I think they're going to fight in September. I'm not sure where, but that'll be against Akhmadaliev is the plan to reunify the Undisputed. And then December move up to featherweight and fight Nick Ball, which makes sense. Nick Ball is potentially the number 1 guy at featherweight. He's also a Queensberry, Saudi Arabia fighter. So it makes sense that they would want to push that fight. You look at the rest of the champions. None of them are really a part of the Riyadh season mix. So you would naturally think that, in a way, now with Riyadh season, he'll fight Nick Ball. And Nick Ball is thinking that he's A-side in the fight. You're not A-side. Even though I know that you are the champion, I know it's your division, you're not the A-side. Same thing with Canelo when he fought Bivol and lost. But Canelo was easily the A-side. In fact, in the rematch, if he ever fights Bivol again, he'll probably still be the A-side. It's just how it works. I don't think that Inoue is ducking so bad to an extent. I think his team is avoiding MJ. I don't think that what Eddie Hearn is saying about he needs to be removed from the pound-for-pound list, I think that that's bull. He's still the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. Do I think that he's not fighting the guy that he should be fighting? Yes. He's not fighting MJ Akhmadaliev when he should be. But that has no impact on how good he is as a boxer. It has an impact on how good of a legacy he leaves as a boxer. And he is going to fight MJ. It's weird. They're delaying it. They're pushing it back. They're not making it next in the plan. They're making it 2 fights down the line, 3 fights down the line. I don't understand what the holdback is. Because now, we know Inoue wasn't going to be at 122 forever. We're saying he's going to move to 126 before Nakatani gets up to 122. Because they want them to have both have 3 or 4 fights this year and then fight in 2026. What's the holdup? Do it now. I'd rather see that than MJ. I mean, every single time we try and build a fight, it's not going to go well. And I'm just saying, in May, when we get to Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney versus Rolly Romero and Jose Ramirez, something could go wrong. Just because we're insinuating, we're going to have all these. They're going to fight, and then Tio and Boots are going to fight after they have big unification fights. Then the winners and losers, those are going to fight. That plan will not work out the way it is. I would love it to, but it won't. You don't put the cart before the horse. Every time this happens, something goes wrong with it. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see Inoue. If he does fight 4 times this year, that'd be spectacular. I'd love to see him fight more often. Also fight, later in the day. But I have to admit that as of right now, I'm definitely disappointed with the MJ Akhmadaliev situation. And to be honest, I love the idea of him moving to featherweight, but I think that after Akhmadaliev, you have to fight Junto Nakatani. That's the biggest fight by far. And then after that, you can move it to featherweight because there's nothing left for you at 122. Besides Sam Goodman, but forget Sam Goodman. Hello. Okay, let's get moved on to the next part of the episode where we're going to talk about all the fights that were on Saturday. So, no UFC this weekend, but the what we did have was the PFL Bellator event. Well, no longer Bellator, I guess. it was the Bellator title fight between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes. And we're going to talk a little bit about the undercard. Not really much to say. Some good fighters on it, some okay fights. I thought the pacing of the prelims was very good. The big problem with the PFL is people say they're pacing. When it got to the main card, which, by the way, it doesn't make a lot of sense how they have a designated prelims and a designated main card, but there's no, designated start time with them. But I thought that once it got, to the end of the prelims and the beginning of the main card, we were going, 20 minutes in between fights, and that felt a little bit stupid. It was like, all right, whoa, what are we doing here? We're moving so well, and now we're going really slow. And then once we got to the last, 3 or 4 fights, picked right back up again, started going fast. So I don't know what is going on at the events, but they need to get it going faster. They sold out the Coca-Cola Arena in Dubai, which I was shocked at. That's good to see that the Middle East is getting more of a combat sports audience. That's the big complaint with Riyadh season, is that their events don't get a lot of atmosphere. There's a lot of atmosphere there on Saturday. Sold it out. The show looked good. The product was very nice. It was an overall very enjoyable event. The main event, I think, totally shocked everyone. This was such a good fight. I thought that, as we got closer to the fight, when it got announced, I was like, oh, that's such a good fight. Because Usman is probably Bellator's best fighter. Paul Hughes is, potentially their biggest, has the highest ceiling as a star. And I was like, oh, that's a great fight. Maybe it's too early for Paul Hughes. It was not too early for him. And this is one of the best fights that PFL can make. They don't have a huge roster, and they made a great matchup. And it's just it felt that Usman was definitely off. And I know that some people were unhappy with Usman getting the win. Personally, I wasn't too upset with it. When I look at my scorecard, I had Usman won the first round. I didn't think a ton happened in the first round, but I thought Usman won it. Paul Hughes won the second round, and it was, a brilliant round by him. That was just, so impressive. He was fully into slow, very effective. It wasn't like they were, each getting, terribly hurt, but it was just that, the fight was just so competitive for all the rounds. I'm only confident in Usman winning round 5, and maybe round 1, and Paul Hughes winning round 2, kind of, but even then 3 and 4, but rounds 3 and 4 could have gone either way. I personally had, I did have Usman winning round 3, but that's also with the point deduction that got served to him, so that's a 9-9 round. And then I had Paul Hughes winning round 4, and then I had Usman definitely coming back and rallying and winning round 5. So I had it a draw, personally. I'm not mad at you saying Usman won, and I'm not mad at you saying Paul Hughes won. I thought it was a draw. Regardless, they put on a fantastic fight, probably one of the best fights in PFL history. Just the event as a whole showed they've got potential. They really have potential. Everyone was talking about it. It had the traction of a UFC fight night. Maybe even more than that. It was a brilliant fight. Paul Hughes, while Usman is out in the corner, recovering from the eye poke or low blow or something, Paul Hughes just staring him down, smiling with the blood streaming down, is iconic. That will be an MMA moment cemented in history forever. That was amazing. He handled the loss with lots of class as well. You had Khabib there with some nice words. What's mostly clear is that we need to do a rematch. Paul Hughes said he wants to do the rematch in Belfast. I love that. I think that definitely was more of an Usman crowd, at least from the jump. But I think that, they really did just put on a hell of a show. I would love to see that fight run back. Honestly, that was one of the best fights in MMA I think we're going to see this year. And it wasn't UFC. So, the fact that we can say that about PFL really brings them up a notch, because I feel like most people, 90% of casual fans think that UFC is a sport, and that don't even realize that MMA is a sport that has multiple organizations that operate within it. So, for PFL to be able to pull off such a big fight like this in such a big event. You know what I mean? Like in the storyline, like the rematch, when fights are like this, the rematch is always going to be bigger. It's going to sell more. They need to do that. I think it's probably one of the best moves that they can make to really compete with the UFC more. Next up, we had the Matchroom doubleheader. So that was Dalton Smith versus Waleed Awiza. And then we had Diego Pacheco versus Steven Nelson. So just looking at Smith-Wiesa, I thought the card was pretty good. You'd started with Trey Dewberry, who had 2 knockdowns, and then one of the most crazy cases of genuinely getting saved by the bell. I mean, 15 or so seconds left in round 6, the final round. He gets dropped hard, gets up totally wobbly. Listen, if this was middle of the round, the ref may call it off with how wobbly he was. But given that the bell had already rung during the count, there was no more pain for him to, endure. The ref lets him fight. Listen, if there was a minute and a half more in that fight, Dewberry may have gotten stopped. But he gets very lucky. He gets a 59-53 decision win from the referee scorecard. Hey, lucky guy. That was real. That was pretty crazy. And then you had Hamza Udin and Ibrahim Suleiman both debuting at 8 rounds and both going the distance. A little bit surprised that Suleiman did. He usually has pretty good stoppages. Not this time. Udin, I expect that. By the way, they switched them. Usually Udin fights on the main card. Suleiman fights on the prelims. The other way around this time. And I think that may be because of their respective KO ratios. But regardless, they both go the distance. Ellie Scottney wins a unanimous decision she's now the WBO, IBF, IBO, and Ring Magazine Super Bantamweight World Champion. She beats Miyamoto. They're both undefeated. I thought that was a really good matchup from the get-go. Supposed to happen in August. Scottney got injured. Moto had a fight in the interim. They come back, and Scottney looked really well. And I think that Moto looked pretty good as well, but just got kind of outclassed, outskilled. I personally had the fight in 97-93. The judges had it 98-92 and 99-91. And then 99-91 over again. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. All 3 judges scored at 99-91. I thought that was a little bit far. I thought Motu won at least 2 or 3 of the rounds. But regardless, good performance by Scottney. And I was going to say, she's got Romero is the WBA champ. Mercado's the WBC champ. She can totally go for undisputed, and I would like her to do that until she calls out Sky Nicholson. And I start to think, well, undisputed looks great on your resume. What fight means more? The Sky Nicholson fight is huge. That's a really, really good fight. And Sky Nicholson, I think she tweeted, she was like, it's become the Sky Nicholson fight that people are talking about. And that's how you made it. And I'm like, she's right. She really is the upper echelon of the female division. And so she's now having other fighters call her out. And she's got many super fights out there for her to pursue. And this is one of the better ones I think is going to go under the radar. Do I think that Nicholson beats her? Yes, I do. I think Nicholson's a very good fighter, very smart fighter. However, they're only one division apart. I would love to see Scottney versus Nicholson. If Nicholson she's going to defend against Tiara Brown. She may unify with Nina Meinke, may try to do the Serrano fight. Don't know if that one happens. If not, in the interim, Scottney should maybe try to get another unification or a title defense. But I would love to see them match. That'd be a really, really fun fight. Co-main event, one of the best stories. First of all, just comeback story in general. Conor Walker was not looking good. I think he was, had 2 defeats. He got in. He was put in a year and a half ago against Cyrus Pattinson, who was a fast-tracked prospect. Sorry. Put in there to get beat. And he stops him. And, stays with Matchroom. Stops another undefeated opponent. Gets the Lewis Crocker fight, which he loses. I thought that he won that fight, which, I thought it was a robbery, but they keep him. He fights Lewis Ritson, looks great, dominates him. Then he gets his British title shot, which he says, this is my world title, against Harry Scarf. And, Scarf is a very good fighter. Almost got the world title shot against Boots, but lost a eliminator to Chukajan. Bounces back here to fight Conor Walker. for his British and Commonwealth belts. And I mean, he was looking great. You know, was up at least 9 or 10 rounds. I think I had Kona Walker winning 1 round in the fight. Most people had him winning none. Round 11, Walker comes out of nowhere with a huge hit, drops him hard. Scarf gets up, Walker puts the beating on him, ref calls it off. I mean, genuinely one of the best comebacks you will ever see. Was totally down, lost maybe every round, gets the stoppage win in the 11th, becomes the British and Commonwealth champion. They just announced today that he signed a multi-fight extension deal. You have to love for him. I'm a huge Kona Walker fan. Every time he fights, you just got to tune in. You know it's going to be entertaining. I mean, what a performance. Like, he was getting totally outskilled and outclassed. And then at the very end, pulls it off. That was really cool to see. Then you look at Dalton Smith, who, with Weeze, as soon as he gets in the ring, he just starts to totally just outclass him. And you can just see, I was like, they are levels apart. And I know it's for the European, and Weeze, got put in there for a reason because he was ranked with the EBU. But, I mean, Smith was on another level and stops him in 1 round. Just starches him. And it makes it clear, okay, Smith needs to be stepped up. I love the Adam Azim fight. I don't think that's not going to be next because that's another thing, by the way. Adam Azim got offered Dalton Smith, Pierce O'Leary, Sean McComb. All of those he backed out of. I think he was going to fight Montana Love, and that fell through for whatever reason. But I don't know why they're so afraid of putting Azim in with, other guys. Because, listen, he's a favorite against O'Leary. He's a favorite against McComb. He's probably a favorite against Smith, maybe. But anyways, that's, another discussion. Smith, I'd love to see the Azim fight. I'd like to see him fight the winner of Oscar Duarte, Regis Prograis. I think that would make sense. Leon Paro is a good fight. Somebody like George Kambosos could also be good. There's a lot of good names at 140. It's such a good division, but he's going to get, if he wins, he gets another fight this year, sometime in the summer maybe, he can get a shot at the winner of Alberto Puello, Sandor Martin for the WBC Championship of the World. And that's a fight that, that's very winnable. I mean, 140 is good, but, whoever wins out of Puello Martin is definitely the weak link out of the champions. So I think that he can pull off a win there and become world champion. So Matchroom has to be smart about how they move him because you want to put him in a big fight that's going to matter, but you also want to put him in a big fight that he'll win because you don't want to sacrifice that world title shot. Or, do the fight with Azim, which is huge. Winner of that still gets the WBC world title shot. So, I thought it was a really good event. Their pacing was very good. Whole card in under 3 hours, and that was with, and I know the main event only went 1 round, but the first 2 fights went the distance. The third one essentially did. Eddie Hearn said they wanted to improve the UK product and the pacing, and I think they did a really good job with that. Moving into Vegas, Pacheco and Nelson. Prelims were fantastic. Zakeen Moses, his opponent, tore his bicep or something after the first round, couldn't continue. Harley Medeiros got a really, really brutal third-round knockout. That was fantastic. You had Nishant Dev debuting with a first-round stoppage win. Apparently talked to His Excellency after. So really good prospects. I was really excited for that before the Bell Show. Main card, Leonardo Rubalcava and Israel Mercado fight to a draw. And let me tell you, Rubalcava got very, very lucky. Scored a knockdown in the first round against Mercado, in a round that he otherwise would have won. You can still give that round to Mercado, honestly. Outside of the knockdown, he was totally winning. And then you also had Mercado lose a point. Listen, if he doesn't get that knockdown, if he doesn't lose that point, he wins the fight. So Rubalcava got out very lucky. I don't think that he got robbed or anything. I think that it was a draw. I scored it a draw, but I think he got lucky. Tito Mercado looked good. 4th round stoppage over Jose Pedraza, which is big. And to be honest, everyone's talking about, I don't know if I like Tito Mercado's trash talk. I don't know if I do either. I like him calling out the other fighters. The issue is that I don't know who's going to tell him, but he keeps on calling out guys at 135, and he's in 140. He's calling out Shakur, Gijon, y'all are afraid. I'm like, dude, they're not in your division. Why are you not calling out the guys in your division? He's only calling out 135-pounders. And I don't know why. It's really weird. But him and Shakur going at it ringside was funny. Um, good performance overall. Then you had Andy Cruz, who dominated Omar Salcido. I thought it was a good performance. I would like to see more from him, just in the fact that, I can see he has power. He's an exciting fighter to watch, but it's also a little bit you need to get more stoppages. I don't know. Like, after that fight with, by the way, he went to go dap up Keyshawn and Shakur after, and it's nice to see that they kept it classy, but I was a little bit like, don't y'all hate each other? Don't you call him your son? And now, like, neither of you, I'm not saying, Andy Cruz, like, Keyshawn, neither of them said anything to each other. I was like, that's kind of odd. Not going to keep the same energy, but, whatever. Be a very good opponent to beat. I'd like to see Andy Cruz in a big fight next. However, I also think that he needs more time to develop his pro style. He needs to get in with somebody who, like a former world champion, and he needs to beat them in great fashion, and then you can put him into the title shot. Because, I saw Hearn saying, like, who's the biggest fight for Keyshawn out of, you got Tank, who's potentially going to retire. You have Shakur, who's never going to be, and then it's Andy Cruz. And he's totally right. Andy Cruz is by far the best fight for Keyshawn Davis after those ones. Those two fight. It's a brilliant matchup. I'd love to see it. Diego Pacheco, Steven Nelson was interesting. Pacheco wins, unanimous decision. I had it 115-113, which is closer than some. I thought that Pacheco lost the first 3 rounds. I thought he had a really slow start, and I was starting to think, I was like, man, they got to get going. And then, started to build up his confidence. Like, round 4, I thought he edged. Round 5, I thought he won. And then when it was, like, round 6 through 9 or 10, so good. Like, just so confident. He was in such a stride. And I was, when it was, like, 7, 8, 9, I was like, he's on the brink of stopping Nelson. And after round 10, I was like, I'd be very... Steven Nelson's tough as nails. My God. He took such a beating in there. And then round 11, 12 comes back and beats Pacheco and hurts him like a couple of times. Like, not like wobbles him, but definitely has some effect on his shots. It's a really good performance. Overall, like, it was a great fight that they set up. I thought the actual what happened was even better of a fight. They matched really well in there. And Steven Nelson can still be in big fights. Or at least good fights. Like, one that I threw out there was Trevor McCumbee. Can't tell me you're not interested in that fight. That's a brilliant fight. McCumbie's getting a lot of new opportunities after that Caleb Plant performance. Even though he lost, he looked damn good. I would love to see him with Steven Nelson. I think that's a great fight. Pacheco, as for what's next, you don't want to throw him in for Canelo yet. He probably won't get that shot until 2026. Eddie mentioned names like Munguia, Saras, of course, Charlo, Plant, Berlanga, and Billy. Like, those are the fights we really want to see Pacheco in. I think it's time. However, what people are starting to realize is that, he's number 1 with the WBO. Probably won't get around for a while to his mandatory. He could fight somebody else in the WBO that's not highly ranked. That's not like a big name. He'll probably be for an eliminator or interim title shot. I really see that happening. I would like to see him in like a 50-50 fight, though. Like, him and Berlanga is the one that most people are talking about. They're both with Matchroom. Berlanga wants it. I bet Pacheco wants it. That's a brilliant 50-50 fight. I think probably you'd favor Pacheco just because Berlanga's coming off a loss, but it's also to Canelo. Pacheco has more potential. He's also younger, though. He's only 23, which is nuts. Like, all these other guys are, top contenders, and he's, so young. So, they've got a really good star in him. I think he will be world champion one day. I don't know when he gets the Canelo fight, but, I'm really excited to see what they do with him. And now we get to what I think was the best, most enjoyable, most entertaining event of the whole weekend, the whole year so far, maybe. And that was KnuckleMania V, Eddie Alvarez versus Jeremy Stephens. What a show. Philly, BKFC gets their homecoming in Wells Fargo Center, biggest attendance. And, man, it was so cool to see BKFC, like, in, like, a huge, a big arena. It's rare that you get to see that with them. They fight in smaller areas, smaller arenas, or, like, kind of, like, weird venues. Like the Hard Rock at Hollywood. Like, that's a place that they're usually at. So this was way different. They had a lot of fights on the card. The pacing at first was a little bit slower than I'm used to with BKFC. What I love about them is how fast they move. Still at the end of the day, got I think 12 fights in overall in less than 4.5 hours, which is tremendous. But the fights themselves were really good. Only two went the distance. That's nuts. And the two that did were fantastic fights. The opening fight between Babu Lades and McDowell was brilliant. I think that there was like a total of like 7 or 8 knockdowns in that fight. It was ridiculous. And then you had the fight between Starling and Rawlings, which went the distance as well. That was a tremendous fight. Lots of good knockouts. Keith Tomlinson Jr. had a crazy knockout. Just put Pat Sullivan to sleep. He had a lot of other really good performances in there. I mean, the whole event was just so entertaining. They're becoming. I personally think it's a little bit of a brain rot of the combat sports. You got boxing, which is the sweet science, is very technical, very tactical. You got UFC, which is mixing all these old martial arts, all these disciplines. And then you have BKFC, where they just pull these guys off the streets and say, put these shorts on, get in there and just brawl. And that's all it is. And it's so funny. The fights last for like 1 minute. And they're going at such a trajectory. Like, they're going to be huge one day. They already are huge, but it's awesome to see. I really like Dave Feldman. It's just, oh man, they're doing so well. But the co-main and main event, Ben Rothwell knocking out Mick Terrell in like 20 seconds with one punch. I mean, jeez, like I did not see that coming. I knew it was going to be probably only like 1 or 2 rounds, but I thought Terrell, is probably the favorite there. You have to think. He's been in bare knuckle for so long. But, I mean, Ben Rothwell is so much bigger. I think he's 43 or something, but hell of a character. Super funny, super entertaining. He's now the heavyweight champion. He wants in on that $25 million tournament, which, I mean, I guess they can let him, but I also just want to see him, defend the belt and fight other heavyweights. Then again, like, who else really is there for them to fight? Like, these are really the only 2, like, big heavyweights that they had. I'm sure they can find more people, but, great knockout. Then you have Eddie Alvarez, Jeremy Stevens, which is really interesting. Eddie Alvarez homecoming, Jeremy Stevens, the whole city against him. I mean, the whole week was just hilarious. Really the whole city was against him. And I was like, man, he's, like, after his win, I was like, he's got to walk out of that arena with very careful because he's got a target on his back. But Eddie looked good. I thought he totally won those first 2 rounds. The first round he dominated. Second round, I thought that he, Stevens has more success, but still Alvarez was looking so good. And then third round just gets dropped, really hardly knocked down. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And goes on for another minute or so, then gets dropped again. And I was thinking, I was like, this doesn't look too good. Goes to the corner, and they decide he's not going to go on. I think it was something with his eye. He couldn't see well. So gets called off. Jeremy Stevens gets the win, in Philly, the city that hates him. Really good performance. I mean, he kind of got lucky in a way. No, I don't want to say lucky because I just mean that he was losing and then, found his stride, got a good shot in and, significantly hurt Alvarez and left a stain on him that he couldn't fight with. So, good performance from him there. And then, just remember all those years ago, who the fuck is that guy? At the Conor McGregor-Eddie Alvarez press conference. Look at him now. Here he is. Conor McGregor gets in the ring and is saying, like, oh, set it up. Let's fight him. Tells Dave Feldman afterwards, get me a date. Fight me. Have me and Jeremy Stevens fight in bare knuckle. I mean, seriously, this is where we're at now. He just became a huge star. Honestly, him versus Mike Perry, I think, is a great fight. I think it's a good fight regardless, but they're probably maybe now the 2 biggest stars BKFC has. That's a great fight. I mean, Jeremy Stevens, is just, seriously, I'm really happy for him. He's just, a lot left the UFC and, he was never, a top contender, really, and now here he is and at the top of the world. Conor McGregor wants a fight with him. That's nuts. So you have to be happy for him. Great performance, great win. Hopefully they can get him another big fight against Mike Perry. I don't think the McGregor fight happens. That'd be great, but yeah, really, really great event from KnuckleMania. I'm excited to see what they have because that wasn't even a pay-per-view. They're supposed to have 2 pay-per-views this year on DAZN. So I can't wait to see what they have cooking up for those ones. Okay, we've got a lot of the little tidbits here from over the past few days. I haven't made a video or a podcast in a few days. I apologize. Just been busy. Trying to be more active. But anyways, Bo Nickel is reporting. He's claiming that he knows for a fact that UFC 314 is officially going to happen April 12th in Miami with Ilia Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski too. Not really much to say. I like that. Do I think that, Ilya versus Volk is a fight that needs to happen? No, but I think that Volk is such a long-reigning champion that he deserves it. I would have liked to have seen him get a fight in the interim, but, I'm not mad at him getting the fight with Ilya right off the bat. It's been a while, too long without Volk in the cage. If Ilya beats him, he really is at the top of the world. Gets another good fight. Two more defenses at featherweight, then he can move up to lightweight. But yeah, the only thing that worries me is that I'm like, April 12th is going to be the same night as Boots and Stanionis, which kind of sucks because those are two big fights that I want to watch. We'll have to watch them at the same time then. Michael Conlan signs with Wasserman, and then is also going to be returning on their show on March 7th on the Eubank McKenna undercard, which I think is a little bit funny because he still, promotes Conlan. Now he's on his undercard, but really interested that one. Conlan is putting their events on ProBox TV, and then they've got something going on with Wasserman where, he signed with Wasserman, and the Conlan fighters are on Wasserman's show, and Wasserman fighters are on Conlan's show. It's really weird. I'm really surprised that Conlan did end up signing a deal with Wasserman when it finally felt like Conlan Boxing, now Conlan Sport, was starting to take off. Not take off, but they had more consistent events. Sorry. They're going to, do an event like essentially every month. So I'm a little bit surprised, but, I'm excited to see what happens. That Eubank McKenna card is actually looking pretty decent. Eubank McKenna in the main event, Michael Conlan, co-main event. You got Dan Toward and Tom Welland on the card. Tom Welland, by the way, who's headlining the top tier show in February. A month later, he's back out. Love that because the biggest issue with Wasserman is how they do so little shows. They can't service all of their good prospects. Welland and Toward, they say, those are their two, top dogs. And they are both great prospects. So glad that they're going to keep them active. And I'm really noticing that Wasserman is starting to put their fighters on other shows. They've always worked, they'll put their fighters on, Saudi shows. Lyndon Arthur's going to fight on the Ring Magazine show in April. But, now you're seeing they've got Khalil Majid fighting on the Conlan show, and you've got Tom Welland fighting on the top tier show, and you're just kind of spreading your guys. You got Charlie Edwards fighting on the Queensberry show. So it's just good to see. Tai Tuivasa is coming. He's going to be out until 2026. Don't know what's going on there. He lost to Rosenstruik in August, got dominated. I don't think that means that you have to take a year and a half off, but do what you will. I don't know if he's injured or something, but I'm a really big fan of him. I think he's really funny, so hopefully he comes back sooner than that. I'm going to try and pronounce this name right. I think it's Etinoa Oliha, and Kyron Davis has been ordered for an IBF middleweight world title eliminator. Winner of that will challenge Janibek for his unified titles. I don't mind the fight. I think that Oliha and Davis are evenly matched. I'm not mad at the winner of that, based on where they are. Middleweight's a pretty dead division, so, I'm not mad at the winner of that can get a world title shot with Janibek. I think it's a good matchup at least. I don't know if they deserve the Janibek fight, but it's a good matchup. Really what else is there for 160? Speaking of Janibek, it's also now being reported that Shaquille Thompson, who's fighting on the GBM show and is ranked in the top 10 with WBO, is going to fight Janibek in April or May in Kazakhstan. We just heard that Janibek was going to headline a big ESPN card in March. I guess that's not happening. I have no idea if this is any true, but if he is fighting Shaquille Thompson, that's a little bit of a letdown, just because there's so many other better names before Thompson at 160, like Oliha, like Davis, but again, it's also a really dead division. But hey, if they're gonna do the fight in Kazakhstan, that's pretty good. You want him to be in there with a guy that you'll know he'll beat, and also won't be tough to deal with. what's it called? Promotional disputes. Apologies. Because GBM is not really going to hold him back from that. The GFL had their draft. My interest level is not super high right now. You've got guys like Tyron Woodley in there, Holly Holm, Tony Ferguson, Dylan Dennis. I think they have 6 total cities with teams, so I have no idea what the product's actually going to look like. It sounds like, to me, I'm not going to believe it until we get an actual event, an actual broadcaster. That's when I'll really start, thinking about it. But before then, I am not going to, care too much about it or believe in it, buy into the product too much. To me, this is one of those things where you have an investor and a new promotion come in with this huge plan, and they've got all the right ideas and all the right money, and they're going to take over, and it just doesn't work out. I honestly don't think that GFL will be a thing in 18 months. Please prove me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be a thing. Tim Tszyu is potentially returning against Joey Spencer, and this would be to set up a fight with him and Keith Thurman down the line in Australia on Prime Video. We talked about that in the last episode. I think that him and Joey Spencer is honestly a really, really good fight for him to come back off a loss. I think Joey Spencer only has 1 defeat, but, he's still a good opponent that Tszyu will definitely beat, but, is worth a name and is worth a challenge that, you won't have to just, you'll have to show up for him. I think that's a really good comeback fight, so I don't mind it at all. We're hearing that could be April 6th. And they also, No Limit just posted a picture of him with Nikita Tszyu, saying big news coming soon. Probably an announcement in the next week or two about that card with Nikita Tszyu likely in the co-main event. They're in the same division. Nikita Tszyu is getting high up in the rankings, so I don't know. I think Tim may be moving to 160, which I don't know if that's a good idea, but we'll see. So Conor McGregor claimed that the reason that the fight with Logan Paul fell through is because UFC had no interest in it. Dana White then corrected that and said the reason is that, and I think this is more so why it's not happening with Jake Paul or the Pauls in general, is that he hates Jake Paul, which I get. He doesn't like him. He doesn't want to negotiate with him, but it's also a little bit petty to take that opportunity from Conor just because you don't like the guy's brother. I mean, you do business with Logan, so I don't see why Prime is literally a sponsor of the UFC, so I don't see why there's any reason why he would block the Logan fight. If that's the reason, that doesn't make any sense. The Jake fight, there's a reason. I don't know if I think it's a good reason, but, whatever. We've got George Kambosos, the Sydney, Australia card, has been announced for March 22nd. No opponents yet, which is weird. We should be getting that this week, but we already know who they're all pretty much fighting. Sky Nicholson and Tiara Brown, great fight. Shanika Johnson and Nina Hughes, too, great fight. Those are 2 world title fights. Very excited for those. Tara Moana is confirmed to be on the card. No Justice Hooney confirmation, which I think is a little bit odd because they said he would be. Hopefully this means that they're going to step him up the levels and get him a good fight and not just another trash can for him to knock over. But the rumors is that George Kambosos is fighting Daoud Yordan, who, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not familiar with at all. But I've heard some people say, this is a good bounce-back opponent. I mean, if you're going to have him headline in his hometown, make his debut at 140, I'm not expecting him to go in there and fight Teofimo Lopez again, even though he actually beat Teofimo. I just forgot that. But, fight a world champion at 140. But I thought you'd give him a good opponent at least. Somebody who, it'll be a bit of a challenge. Whatever. After he fights him, do the Liam Parra fight. The Richardson-Hitchens fight could be good, but the Liam Parra one is way more interesting to me, at least. Boot Stanionis, winner must fight Shakram Giasov. Apparently, Giasov will be on the undercard. It's weird. I thought that Stanionis and Giasov was agreed fully. It was going to be on March 1st. That didn't happen. But I'm not mad because Boots Stanionis is a better fight. And then I won't be mad at the winner, not getting straight into unification and having to fight Giasov. However, Boots, if he wins, which I think he may, he probably will, he's got to go in and fight Teofimo Lopez and then the winner or loser of Garcia and Haney. So I think that Giasov may be fighting for a vacant title. Just because I don't think that Boots is actually going to fight Giasov. I think he's going to move on to bigger opportunities. Speaking of that card, Ray Ford is going to return on April 12th. I like that. Eddie Hearn keeps saying he wants to have him fight Zelfa Barrett. That's a fantastic in-house fight at 130. The issue with Zelfa Barrett is the Jazza Dickens fight on February 15th. He said if he comes through with that, gets like an early stoppage or something, no injuries, put him right back out there April 12th. I love that. Absolutely do it. That's such a good fight. If not, there are good names for him to fight. But yeah, glad he's going to be on that card. That should be a really big card. We're hearing that Angel Ayala and Masamichi Yabuki are in talks to fight at flyweight. Yabuki is the 108-pound champion with the IBF. He was in talks with Eric Rosa to have a unification at 108. It seems he's abandoned that to move up to 112 and fight Ayala, which I don't mind. I think that's a really good matchup. 112 is getting very interesting. We'll talk about 112 in a minute. Got some announcements there that came out today. But, yeah, I like that idea of Ayala and Yabuki fighting. I think that could happen, pretty soon. What else? McComb and O'Leary, as we mentioned, that they both were offered. It was even to turn it both down. Apparently, they were going to fight each other on the You-Make Ben card, but were moved for Chris Smith versus Brandon Glenn. I get it. CBS fighting is way bigger than McComb versus O'Leary. However, that's a really good fight. I think it's a little bit misplaced. They're both Irish. I think Pierce O'Leary's. No, yeah, they're both Irish. They should do that somewhere in Ireland. Maybe Queensberry does another Belfast show. That sucks. I hope they could still put it on the card. I hope we can still see that fight. That's a really good fight. But yeah, I would like to see that headline its own card in Ireland somewhere. Matchroom is going to be, as we know, in the November, December, they had a lot of their prospects, rising stars, contenders lose fights. You had both Khalil Coe and Jaleel Hackett lose. Khalil Coe's loss was definitely worse to Gallegos. He got stopped, just totally gassed out. Apparently, they're going to be rematching in Mexico, which is brilliant. That's really cool for Coe to go to Gallegos' backyard. Reminds me of when Nochinga lost to Carrillo and he went to Mexico to beat him. Love that they're going to put him right back in because, Khalil Coe was really looking like had a bright future and then lost it. And then Jaleel Hackett and Roman Vasquez, which I thought was controversial. I thought Hackett won that fight, and a lot of people do. But, he was in Puerto Rico, didn't get the decision. They're going to rematch March 15th at the Crib Royale. I love that they're going to throw these guys right back in with rematches. And those two make sense because Coe was in there with Gallegos, who is, a higher level than Hackett's fighting at. Coe was, really becoming a contender, in the next 2 years or so. And Hackett, was wanting to be a contender and was wanting to kind of rush his career. Just got an unlucky decision. So, like that they're both getting rematches. Like we talked about, the last thing we'll talk about is the Japan card on March 13th was announced today. Kenshiro Taraji versus Sergey, what's his name? No, Seijo Yuri Akui. That is, sorry, I forgot, I mispronounced his name. But that is such a good fight. That's probably the best fight at 112. Maybe not the best fight. I mean, it's such a good division. You have those two are the champions. There'll be a WBC and WBA unification. You have Anthony Osquaga, who will be on that undercard, I believe in the co-main event, although I'm not sure. And he's going to be in there with, let me pull it up. So he'll be in there against the Hiroto Kyoguchi, and that'll be for the WBO championship. Ryosuke Nishida is the other champion at 112 pounds. He holds the IBF belt. Hopefully, we can get all those guys to unify at some point. But love that Taraji and Ikui are. Brilliant fight. Alasquaga returning is good. Kyoguchi's a good fight. And then Shokichi Iwata versus Rene Santiago, which I saw some people were kind of disappointed that Santiago's getting the shot. Iwata holds the WBO light flyweight belt. This was held by Bomba Gonzalez, who obviously fought Alasquaga and quit after one round, which, was very disappointing to see. However, Santiago fought Bamba on the Amanda Serrano Jake Paul Puerto Rico card last year, and I thought that he won the fight. So I'm glad that he gets another shot at the belt. Yeah, no. So, but that's a hell of a card. 3 world title fights. My only concern, it's on a Thursday morning as well. My only concern is this is a U-Next card. It doesn't look like it's one of like the Prime Video cards. Also, no word from Top Rank yet. So I do not know yet if we're gonna get to see those guys fight, um, which sucks. Here on the western side of the world in the America, I don't know if we're gonna get to see that fight live. Hopefully, I'll just be able to find a way. Really hope that they get on ESPN Plus. If not, DAZN can pick up the rights because a lot of these world title fights in lower divisions are in Japan and other parts of Asia or South America, and they're just not available in the U.S., which sucks. So hopefully they can get that sorted and we can get some kind of viewing for that card. Hopefully on ESPN Plus because Top Rank usually works with Taken and Hashi on broadcasting these cards in the U.S., and that's a brilliant card. I mean, Taraji and Akui is such a good fight. That's one of the best fights like coming up. It's a good world title unification. Hopefully we can see it. And then the last thing, Murataya and Abdullayev have not yet reached a purse bid, or have not yet reached an agreement. They're going to head to purse bids. Hopefully Top Rank can get it because, otherwise Murtaz's going to have to go to Abdullayev's backyard in Russia, and don't know how much he'll be able to get a decision there. Abdullayev is a very good fighter, so it's already going to be a tough fight. Also, hopefully we can get it so that we can get good coverage here in the States and be able to watch it, because I don't know if Murataya versus Abdullayev will be broadcast here in the States if it is in Russia. So that's all for today's episode. It's kind of a long one. I'm going to try and get better at doing these like right after Saturdays and like Sunday mornings. Next week, I'll definitely won't do one until Monday just because Claressa Shields is going to fight Sunday night. Got a huge fight week coming up. David Benavidez, David Morrell. I'm going to try and make another episode in the next 2 or 3 days. Definitely by Thursday, I'll have an episode either on or Wednesday or Thursday. And we'll talk about David Benavidez, David Morrell. Huge weekend of fights. You got Claressa Shields fighting Israel Adesanya versus Imavov on UFC Saudi Arabia on Saturday. You have Adam Azim, Sergey Lipinets on Saturday. BKFC card Saturday. Friday, you've got an IBA Champions Night. The Matchroom Next Gen show in London. You've got Mauricio Lara returning. A lot of good fights this weekend. Can't wait. And, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening, and peace.